2 dead and 14 injured in Toronto in a mass shooting over the weekend at the hands of Faisal Hussein. But Mayor John Tory knows who the real bad guys are: millions of lawful Canadian gun owners. 29-year-old Faisal Hussein died in a gun battle with police after he opened fire in Toronto's Greektown, killing 2 girls aged 10 and 18 and wounding 14 others. Now, the public really doesn't know why Faisal Hussein did this. The police and city officials are not releasing that information yet. But the family of the shooter says that Faisal Hussein suffered from, wait for it, severe mental health challenges, including depression and psychosis. Oh yes, the old mental illness excuse again. And Toronto's Mayor John Tory, well, he knows the real reason why this happened. A gun made Hussein do this, and a gun just might make you do it too. Just watch this agenda-filled press conference from Toronto's Mayor John Tory before the bodies are even cold. Here.
As I've said repeatedly, this is an international problem and this is a domestic problem. There are far too many people carrying around guns in our city and our region who should not have them. You've heard me ask the question of why anybody would need to buy 10 or 20 guns, which they can lawfully do under the present laws. And that leads to another question we need to discuss. Why does anyone in this city need to have a gun at all?
Did you hear that? John Tory doesn't understand why anybody in his city needs a gun. Well, you know, besides the fact that in a free and capitalist society, the government doesn't determine my possessions based on what they decide for me are my needs, I really can't think of a better reason for a private citizen to own a firearm than to defend themselves in a city that is rapidly turning itself into a drugged-out war zone. And I'm not exaggerating about the rapid deterioration of Toronto the Good. As police were investigating Hussein's mass shooting, news broke that police were investigating yet another shooting in the city's north end. 10 minutes after that shooting was reported, an individual arrived at a Toronto hospital suffering serious, potentially life-threatening gunshot wounds. And again, at roughly the very same time, Peel Regional Police were looking for witnesses after 2 grenades were found in a well-known Mississauga park. This is all happening in the Greater Toronto area on the very same day. John Tory is living in a dream world because reality, well, it's pretty ugly right now in Toronto. I'm sure the gangs, terrorists, and mass shooters, who are, of course, known for their strong commitment to following the gun laws of our great nation, you know, like not murdering people, will all turn in their already illegal guns into the city because John Tory said they just don't need them anymore. Now, this is just the progressive reflex to use every tragedy to push for more gun control at work in real time, right in front of our eyes. There are questions about Faisal Hussein and the gun he used that police already have the answers to, but they are not telling us. The police knew the very second they knew Hussein's name. If he was a legal handgun owner possessing something in Canada we call an RPAL, or Restricted Possession and Acquisition License. Every day, as an RPAL holder myself, I am background checked by our National Police Force. Every single day, including Christmas. To get or to renew that license, I'm subjected to the proctology exam of background checks, and this check takes months and months and months to complete. Now, one of the key things the police are looking for in that background check is a history of violence, especially domestic violence, and a history of mental illness. Let me show you right there. I dug up an RPAL application for you. Section C is personal history. Look at these questions here. During the last 5 years, have you been charged, convicted, or granted a discharge for an offense where violence was used, threatened, or attempted, involving the misuse, possession, or storage of a firearm, involving trafficking or importing drugs or controlled substances? Okay, next question. During the past 5 years, have you been subject to a peace bond, protection order, or an order under Section 810 of the Criminal Code? Now, that's what we call a restraining order here. The next one. During the past 5 years, have you or any member of your household been prohibited from possessing a firearm? Next question. During the past 5 years, have you threatened or attempted suicide, or have you suffered from or have been diagnosed or treated by a medical practitioner for depression, alcohol, drug or substance abuse, and behavioral problems or emotional problems? Next question. During the past 5 years, do you know if you have been reported to the police or social services for violence, threatened or attempted violence, or other conflict in your home or elsewhere? Next question. During the past 2 years, have you experienced a divorce, a separation, a breakdown of a significant relationship, job loss, or bankruptcy? And then the next series of questions on the application appallingly go on to ask you about your conjugal status, your sexual partners, your spouse, your boyfriends, or your girlfriends. This application for an RPAL, it's very invasive. What this means is if Hussein was a legal firearms owner obtaining his murder weapon legally, his family, who are now claiming that he has a years-long history of mental illness, and even his past girlfriends, all would have been contacted by the RCMP during a background check. So either the gun was possessed illegally, or Hussein's family didn't tell the police he was mentally ill, or even worse, he wasn't mentally ill at all, and he has other motives at work. And those other motives are being investigated. Our friend Joe Warmington reports that police are investigating a number of motives, including suspected ISIS sympathies. So, Hussein could be a terrorist, or he could be a mentally ill person illegally possessing a firearm, or he could even be a mentally ill person whose family didn't tell the RCMP about his mental illness. But the answer to that today from Liberals is to take away our ability to defend ourselves against any of those awful scenarios. In Sutherland Springs, Texas, after a madman stormed into a church and killed dozens of worshipers inside, a good guy named Stephen Williford, armed with his AR-15 and his NRA training, put an end to that massacre when a man opened fire at an Oklahoma City restaurant, hitting 3 people. 2 legal firearms owners who didn't even know each other both ran out to their respective vehicles to get their own handguns from their trunks, and then they both ran back and confronted and fatally shot that attacker in Washington State. A concealed carry permit holder who also just happened to be a local church pastor shot and killed a man after he went on a violent spree with his car and a gun at a Walmart supercenter. In Chicago in 2015, a concealed carry permit holder who also happened to be an Uber driver stopped what police are describing as a potential mass shooting when a man began firing into a crowd there. Innocent bystanders, good guys, normal people from different backgrounds with one thing in common: their guns, stopping bad guys with guns because they were there when the police couldn't be. Now, why aren't police releasing that information about Hussein and the gun he used in his fatal shooting? They know it, and they knew it immediately. Don't get me wrong. I'm very, very pro-police. It's their political bosses withholding information to push a gun control agenda on behalf of Mayor John Tory that I absolutely cannot stand. In Canada, and especially Toronto, the only thing standing in between citizens and the criminals is an overworked, understaffed police service. In Toronto, there will never be a Stephen Williford who will go on to save countless lives. In Toronto, people are helpless until the police finally show up, and Mayor John Tory is just going to make it worse. For the Rebel.media, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. What you just saw there is the daily video that I do here at The Rebel, but did you know that I also have my own weekly full-length show where I actually talk about issues like gun control? But to get access to my show and the rest of our incredible premium content, treat yourself to a Rebel subscription today.